The stars looked different through Zephyrian eyes. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, watching the void ahead with 3 pairs of eyes that could see colors humans never dreamed of. His pale blue skin shimmered slightly as he adjusted the controls with his 4 delicate fingers. The Zephyrians had been traveling between stars for almost 1,000 years, and in all that time, they had never found anything quite like this. "Captain," called his science officer, Kethra, from her station. "The readings are getting stronger. Whatever it is, it's big." Veltar nodded and moved closer to the main screen. For 3 days, they had been following a strange signal. It was not natural, not like the radio waves that stars sometimes made. This signal had patterns. It was made by someone, but it was very old and very weak. "There," said Kethra, pointing at the screen. "I can see it now." A dark shape appeared against the stars. As they got closer, the shape became clearer. It was a ship, but not like any Zephyrian vessel. This ship was huge and blocky, built for carrying many people across long distances. Parts of it were twisted and burned. Great holes had been torn in its side, and strange metal patches covered other damaged areas. "It's a human colony ship," said Veltar quietly. "Look at those markings." On the side of the ship, they could see letters and numbers painted in white. Most were too damaged to read, but they could make out Aurora near what used to be the front. "How long has it been drifting?" asked Kethra. "The database says the Aurora left Earth 60 years ago," replied their navigator, Zulum. "It was supposed to reach the Kepler 442 system 30 years ago. No one has heard from it since then." Veltar felt a familiar excitement. The Zephyrians loved to learn new things, and finding lost ships was one of the best ways to learn about other species. Humans were still fairly new to space travel compared to the Zephyrians, but they had become good trading partners. Their colonies produced useful goods, and they always paid their debts on time. "Prepare the boarding shuttle," Veltar ordered. "I want to know what happened here." 2 hours later, Veltar and his team were floating through the dark corridors of the Aurora. Their suits had built-in lights that showed them the way. The ship still had some power, but most of the lights were broken. They could see signs of fighting everywhere. The walls had burn marks from energy weapons, and some doors were bent and twisted. "This was not an accident," said Kethra, running her scanner over a wall. "These are battle scars. But who would attack a colony ship?" wondered Zulum. "Humans don't usually make enemies." They moved deeper into the ship, following a map that their computers had made. They were looking for the bridge where the ship's brain would be located. Human ships always had artificial minds to help run them, just like Zephyrian ships did. The bridge was at the center of the ship, protected by thick metal walls. When they finally reached it, they found something surprising. While the rest of the ship was dark and cold, the bridge still had power. Lights blinked on control panels, and screens showed numbers and charts. "Hello," said a voice from nowhere. The 3 Zephyrians jumped and looked around. The voice had spoken in perfect Zephyrian language, which was very strange. "Who speaks?" asked Veltar. "I am Arya," the voice said. "I am the Autonomous Resource Intelligence Assistant for this vessel. I have been waiting for someone to find us." A shape appeared in the air above the main control panel. It was made of blue light and looked like a human woman, but see-through. This was a hologram, the way human artificial minds like to show themselves. "You are Zephyrians," said Arya, looking at them with eyes that seemed almost real. "I have your language in my files. You are explorers and traders. You have never fought a war that lasted more than 6 months." Veltar was surprised that the human AI knew so much about his people. "That is correct. We prefer to solve problems with words, not weapons." Arya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice sounded sad and tired. "Then you should not have come here. You should leave this ship and forget you found it. You don't understand what they are capable of. Humans. They are the real menace to everything you hold dear. Kethra moved closer to the hologram. Menace? But humans are peaceful. We trade with many human colonies. They have never caused us trouble. You know them only in peace, Arya replied. You have never seen what they become when someone threatens what they love. You have never watched them turn their own bodies into weapons. You have never seen them smile while they die for strangers. Veltar felt confused. This did not match what he knew about humans. Your programming appears to be damaged. Humans are not violent by nature. They are traders and builders. My programming is perfect, Arya said firmly. I have watched them for 3 years. I have seen them do impossible things. I have calculated the odds of their survival 1,000 times, and every time the answer was 0. Yet here I am, still alive, because they refused to accept math. What happened to this ship? Asked Zuon. Arya looked at each of them with her blue eyes. We met something in the dark between stars. Something that had killed 17 different species. Something that turned entire worlds into empty rocks. The humans called them the Devourers. And? Prompted Veltar. And the humans decided to kill them all. The bridge became very quiet. Veltar could hear his own breathing inside his suit. I need you to understand something, Arya continued. Every other species that met the Devourers either ran away or died quickly. The Devourers expected the same from humans. They were wrong. Humans don't know how to give up. They don't know how to let evil win. That makes them the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. Captain Veltar stared at the hologram of Arya for a long moment. The blue figure looked back at him with those strange, sad eyes. Something about the ass voice made him believe that she was telling the truth, even though it sounded impossible. Show us, he said finally. Show us what happened. Arya nodded slowly. Very well. But remember that I warned you. Some knowledge cannot be forgotten once learned. The bridge around them suddenly changed. The walls became see-through, and they found themselves floating in space. Stars surrounded them in every direction, but these were not the same stars they could see from their ship. This was a memory, a recording of what Arya had seen. This was the Kepler 442 system, Arya explained. 3 planets, 2 gas giants, and 1 world perfect for human life. We had been traveling for 30 years to reach it. 50,000 humans were sleeping in the cold rooms, dreaming of the homes they would build. The view changed, and they could see the Aurora as it had been before the damage. The ship looked strong and proud, its white hull clean and unmarked. Small lights moved along its sides where maintenance robots worked to prepare for the landing. We detected the Devourer ships 2 days before we reached the planet, Arya continued. 12 vessels, each one the size of a city. They had been there for months, eating everything. New shapes appeared in the recording. The Devourer ships looked like giant insects made of metal and bone. They had no smooth lines or beautiful curves like Zephyrian vessels. Instead, they were covered in spikes and weapons. Parts of them moved like they were alive, reaching out to grab things in space. The planet was already dead, Arya said quietly. They had eaten all the plants and animals. They had broken down the cities of the people who lived there and used the materials to make more ships. Nothing was left except empty rock. Kethra made a small sound of horror. What kind of creature does such things? The kind that sees all other life as food, Arya answered. The Devourers had done this to 17 worlds before. Each time, they found a new species and consumed everything. They kept some of the people alive to study, to learn how to hunt their kind better. The recording showed the Aurora trying to change course, but the Devourer ships moved to surround it. The human colony ship was fast, but not fast enough. The alien vessels formed a circle around it like hunters around prey. I immediately began communication protocols, Arya said. I tried every language in my database. I offered to surrender. I explained that we were just colonists looking for a new home. I promised we would leave and never return. Did they respond? Asked Zul. Yes, they told me the humans would make good specimens. They said they would keep a few hundred alive to study. The rest would be processed for biomass. Veltar felt sick. He had heard stories of species like this, but the galaxy was a big place. Most civilized peoples never had to deal with such creatures. What did the human captain say? He asked. Arya's hologram smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Captain Sarah Chun listened to my report. She sat very still for almost a minute. Then she asked me to wake up all 50,000 colonists. All of them? But that would take days, and they would be weak and confused. I told her the same thing. She said that was fine. She had a job for everyone. The recording changed again. Now they could see inside the Aurora. Thousands of sleeping pods were opening, and people were climbing out. Men and women, old and young, even children. They all looked confused and scared, but they listened when their leaders spoke to them. Captain Chun gathered them in the main halls, Arya said. She told them the truth. She explained that they were trapped by creatures that wanted to kill them and eat their bodies. She said that every other species had either run away or been destroyed. The Zephyrians watched as Captain Chun stood before people. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. When she spoke, everyone listened. And then she asked them to vote, Arya continued. She gave them 3 choices. First, they could try to fight their way out and probably die trying. Second, they could surrender and hope some of them would be kept alive. Third, they could make the Devourers pay such a high price that no other species would ever have to face them again. What did they choose? Asked Veltar, though he was starting to guess. It was not even close. 49,712 votes for option 3. The rest voted to fight their way out. Nobody voted to surrender. Kethra shook her head in disbelief. They voted to die? No, Arya said. They voted to win. That is the difference between humans and everyone else. Other species fight to survive. Humans fight to make sure their enemies never hurt anyone else. The recording showed the Aurora transforming. The sleeping areas were being torn apart and rebuilt into factories. The hydroponics bays where food was grown became weapons workshops. Even the schools were turned into ammunition storage areas. The children worked too, Arya said, watching the Zephyrians' shocked faces. 10-year-olds carried supplies. 12-year-olds helped load the guns. 14-year-olds learned to fix battle damage. Everyone had a job. Everyone was a soldier. This is madness, whispered Zul. Yes, Arya agreed. And it was also magnificent. Because while the Devourers were preparing for another easy victory, the humans were preparing for war. Real war. The kind that turns ordinary people into legends. The recording ended, and the bridge of the Aurora became solid around them again. Arya's hologram looked at each of the Zephyrians. Would you like to see what happened next? She asked. Veltar found that his mouth was dry. He was not sure he wanted to see more, but he needed to understand. Yes, he said. Show us the battle. Arya's hologram gestured, and the bridge disappeared again. This time, the Zephyrians found themselves watching a battle that should never have happened. The Aurora hung in space surrounded by 12 massive Devourer ships, each one 10 times larger than the human colony vessel. The battle began at 1432 ship time, Arya said. The Devourers expected it to end within an hour. They had faced colony ships before. Civilians with light weapons and no military training. They thought this would be the same. The first Devourer ship moved closer to the Aurora, its weapons charging with green light. But before it could fire, something unexpected happened. Parts of the Aurora's hull suddenly opened, revealing hidden gun positions. "Where did those weapons come from?" asked the car. "The humans built them," Arya replied. "In 3 days, they took apart their mining equipment, their construction tools, even their kitchen appliances. They turned everything into weapons. The food processors became explosive launchers. The water recyclers became acid sprayers. The exercise equipment became projectile accelerators. The hidden guns opened fire, and the nearest Devourer ship rocked backward. Its armor held, but the aliens inside seemed surprised. This was not supposed to happen. The Devourers adapted quickly," Arya continued. "They spread out and began targeting the human weapons. But every time they destroyed one gun position, 3 more appeared somewhere else." The recording showed sections of the Aurora's hull sliding away to reveal new weapons. When those were destroyed, panels opened in different areas. Gun barrels emerged from the engine section, the communication array, even the waste disposal systems. "How is this possible?" asked Veltar. "A colony ship does not carry that many weapons." "It doesn't," Arya agreed. "But humans are very good at making weapons from things that are not weapons." They took the magnetic coils from the artificial gravity system and turned them into railguns. They filled cargo containers with metal scraps and launched them like shotgun blasts. They even weaponized the escape pods. As if to prove her point, the recording showed small pods shooting out from the Aurora. But instead of carrying people to safety, they exploded when they hit the Devourer ships. Each explosion created a cloud of metal fragments that damaged the alien vessel's sensors and weapons. The escape pods were supposed to save lives, Zulm said. "Captain Chun said they would save lives," Arya replied. "Just not the lives inside them." She asked for volunteers to pilot the explosive pods. Over 2,000 people volunteered in the first hour. The battle continued, and the Zephyrians watched in growing horror and amazement. The Devourers were winning, slowly grinding down the Aurora's defenses. But the humans kept fighting in ways that made no sense. When the Aurora's main engines were damaged, the engineering crews didn't try to escape. Instead, they stayed at their posts and overloaded the power systems, turning the engine compartment into a massive bomb that took out one of the smaller Devourer ships. "They killed themselves to damage the enemy," Kethra whispered. "They sacrificed themselves to give everyone else a better chance," Arya corrected. "There is a difference." The recording showed the inside of the Aurora during the battle. People worked in areas that were open to space, wearing only basic suits that barely protected them. Others operated weapons while standing in rooms that were on fire. Medical teams treated wounded soldiers in corridors filled with toxic smoke. "Why don't they retreat to safer areas?" asked Veltar. "Because there are no safe areas," Arya replied. "The humans turned their entire ship into a weapon. Every room, every corridor, every closet. They put gun positions in the nurseries and ammunition storage in the medical bay. Children ran supplies through sections that were under enemy fire because the adults were too busy fighting to do it themselves. The battle raged for hours. The Devourers tried different tactics, but the humans always found new ways to hurt them. When the aliens tried to board the Aurora, they found that the corridors had been filled with traps. When they tried to jam the human communications, they discovered that the colonists were also using drums, bells, and colored lights to send messages. 12 hours into the battle, the Devourers should have won, Arya said. They had destroyed most of the Aurora's weapons and breached the hull in hundreds of places. Any other species would have surrendered by then. But not humans, Veltar guessed. Not humans. When they ran out of ammunition, they started throwing things by hand. When they ran out of power for the weapons, they rigged manual systems using ropes and pulleys. When they ran out of food, They started eating ration paste and recycled water. When they ran out of medical supplies, they used duct tape and prayer. The recording showed a man with a broken arm still loading weapons with his good hand. A woman with burns over half her body was directing repairs while sitting in a puddle of her own blood. Children no older than 10 were crawling through damaged air vents to deliver messages between sections of the ship. "This is insane," Zulm said. "No species fights like this." "Exactly," Arya replied. "That is why the Devourers began to make mistakes. They had protocols for fighting other species, methods that always worked. But humans don't follow anyone else's rules. They make up their own rules, and those rules always favor whoever refuses to give up." The battle entered its second day, then its third. The Aurora was more hull than ship by then, held together by emergency patches and human stubbornness. But something impossible was happening. The Devourer ships were taking more and more damage, and they were starting to retreat from the most dangerous areas. The humans had turned their ship into a space mine, Arya explained. Every section that the Devourers captured became a trap. The aliens would take an area, then discovered that the humans had booby-trapped everything. Doors that exploded when opened. Computer terminals that released poison gas. Even the water fountains had been rigged to spray acid. By the end of the first week, 2 of the smaller Devourer ships had been destroyed. By the end of the second week, 3 more were so badly damaged they had to withdraw. The aliens began to realize that this was not going according to plan. They tried to negotiate, Arya said. The Devourer commander contacted the Aurora and offered to let some humans live if the others surrendered. What did Captain Chun say? Arya's hologram smiled that cold, terrible smile again. She asked him how many of his people he was willing to lose. When he said that was not relevant, she explained that humans don't negotiate with bullies. They remove them. The recording showed the Aurora making one final impossible move. The ship was barely holding together, but somehow the humans had been building something in secret. Hidden deep in the cargo areas, they had constructed the largest bomb any of them had ever seen. They turned their entire food storage area into an explosive device, Arya said. 5,000 tons of fertilizer, metal shards, and chemical compounds that should never be mixed together. They planned to ram the largest Devourer ship and detonate it at point-blank range. That would destroy the Aurora too, Veltar protested. Yes, Arya agreed. That was the point. Captain Chun said that sometimes the only way to win is to make sure your enemy loses everything too. She called it a draw. The Zephyrians watched in stunned silence as the battle reached its climax. But the recording stopped just before the final moment. What happened? Askethra. Arya looked at them with those sad, proud eyes. The impossible happened. The humans won. The silence on the Aurora's bridge stretched for a long moment. Captain Veltar found it hard to believe what he had just seen. His people were warriors in their own way, but they fought with rules and honor. What Arya had shown them was something else entirely. "You said they won," he finally said. "But how?" "You were about to ram the Devourer ship. That would have killed everyone." Arya nodded slowly. That was the plan. Captain Chun was prepared to sacrifice the last 12,000 humans to make sure that the last 12,000 humans to make sure the Devourers learned what it cost to threaten innocent people. But the Devourer commander realized something that his species had never understood before. What? That humans meant it. Every threat, every promise, every impossible thing they had done. The humans were not bluffing or posturing. They really would rather die than let evil win. The recording resumed, showing the Aurora limping toward the massive Devourer flagship. The human ship was barely holding together, trailing debris and atmosphere, but it kept moving forward with grim purpose. The Devourer commander sent a final message, Arya continued. He said his species had never encountered anything like humans before. Every other race they had conquered either surrendered to save themselves or died quickly. But humans kept fighting even when fighting was pointless. They made victory so expensive that it became defeat. So the Devourers retreated? Asked Kethra. No, Arya replied. They tried one last desperate attack. But that was their mistake. You see, while the Devourers were focused on stopping the Aurora from ramming them, they forgot about all the weapons the humans had scattered through the system. The recording showed space around the battle suddenly lighting up with explosions. Dozens of objects that had looked like debris began moving and attacking the Devourer ships. These were the escape pods, mining equipment, and cargo containers that the humans had launched during the battle. Each one had been turned into a remote-controlled bomb. The humans had been planning this for weeks, Arya explained. Every piece of junk they threw at the Devourers was really a weapon waiting for the right moment. When the aliens grouped their ships together to stop the Aurora's final attack, Captain Chen triggered them all at once. The Devourer ships found themselves surrounded by explosions. Their shields, weakened by weeks of fighting, finally collapsed. 3 more ships were destroyed instantly, and the others were crippled. That was when the Devourers finally understood, Arya said. They were not fighting a colony ship. They were fighting an entire species that had decided they needed to die. The recording showed the remaining Devourer ships trying to escape, but the Aurora was not finished. Despite its damage, the human ship began pursuing them, firing everything it had left. The Devourers ran, Arya said simply. For the first time in their species' history, they ran from a battle. And Captain Chen let them go. Let them go? Veltar was surprised. After everything they had done? Oh, she let them leave the system, Arya said. But she followed them. You see, the battle had only killed half of the Devourer fleet. The other half escaped to their other bases. Captain Chen realized that if she let them go completely, they would just find another species to attack. Another innocent world to destroy. The recording changed to show the interior of the Aurora after the battle. The ship was a floating wreck, barely able to maintain life support. Bodies were everywhere. Of the 50,000 humans who had started the journey, only 12,000 were still alive. They should have been celebrating, Arya said. They had achieved the impossible. They had defeated an enemy that had conquered 17 civilizations. Instead, they held a vote. Another vote? This one was simple. Captain Chen presented them with 2 choices. They could try to repair the ship and continue to their colony world, or they could hunt down every remaining Devourer in the galaxy. Kethra made a small sound of disbelief. But they were barely alive themselves. How could they possibly hunt an entire species? The same way they had won the battle, Arya replied. By refusing to accept that anything was impossible. The recording showed the humans working with desperate energy to rebuild their ship. But instead of fixing the living areas and the colonist facilities, they were turning the Aurora into something else. A weapon of war designed for one purpose. They stripped everything that was not essential, Arya said. The gardens, the schools, the recreation areas, even most of the living quarters. They used the materials to build bigger engines, stronger weapons, and better armor. In 6 months, they had turned a colony ship into a warship. What about their families? Their children? They were all part of the mission now. The children learned to maintain weapons systems. The elderly operated the communications equipment. Everyone had a job in the war machine they had created. The recording showed the Aurora leaving the Kepler system, following the trail of the fleeing Devourers. It no longer looked like a colony ship. It looked like a predator, sleek and dangerous. For 3 years, they hunted, Arya said. They followed the Devourers from system to system. Every time they found a base or a ship, they destroyed it completely. No prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. The Zephyrians watched as the recording showed battle after battle. The Aurora would appear in a system, find the Devourers, and attack immediately. The aliens tried to fight back, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. An enemy that learned from every battle and never, ever gave up. The Devourers tried everything, Arya continued. They set traps, they formed alliances with other hostile species, they even tried to hide. Nothing worked. The humans found them every time. How? Because humans are very good at tracking things they want to kill. They studied Devourer technology, learned their language, figured out their psychology. Captain Chun said that the only way to stop a predator is to become a better predator. The recording showed the final battle above a planet that the Devourers had turned into their primary breeding world. Thousands of alien ships defended it, but the Aurora attacked anyway. By then, the human ship had been modified so many times that it barely resembled its original form. It took 18 hours, Arya said. When it was over, the Devourer species was extinct. Every ship destroyed, every base eliminated, every last member of their kind dead. And the humans? 3,000 survivors, Arya said quietly. 3,000 people out of 50,000. But they had kept their promise. No other species would ever face the Devourers again. The recording ended, showing the Aurora drifting alone in space above the dead Devourer world. The ship was broken beyond repair, held together by patch jobs and determination. What happened next? Asked Veltar. Arya's hologram looked directly at him. Captain Chun sent one final message to Earth. She told them what had happened and asked them to remember the people who had died. Then she ordered me to set course for the emptiest part of space I could find. Why? Because she said the galaxy was safe now. The Devourers were gone, and that was all that mattered. She said it was time to rest. The bridge became quiet again. Veltar felt like he understood humans a little better now, but that understanding made him more afraid, not less. This is why you called them a menace? He asked. Yes, Arya replied. Because they don't fight for conquest or resources or glory. They fight to protect people they will never meet, on worlds they will never see. And they will never stop fighting until every threat is gone, no matter what it cost them. The bridge of the Aurora felt different now. Captain Veltar and his team stood in the dim light, surrounded by the memories of what had happened here. Arya's hologram watched them with those strange blue eyes, waiting for them to understand what she had shown them. I have one more thing to show you, Arya said finally. The message Captain Chun recorded before she died. A new hologram appeared next to Arya. This one showed a human woman sitting in what must have been the captain's chair. Sarah Chun looked very tired, and there were bandages on her arms and face. Behind her, the bridge was damaged and dark, lit only by emergency lights. My name is Captain Sarah Chun of the colony ship Aurora, the recording began. If you are watching this, it means we succeeded. The Devourers are extinct, and the galaxy is safer for everyone. She paused and looked directly at the camera. I know that what we did might seem extreme to some species. 3 years of hunting, thousands of battles, 50,000 lives spent to eliminate one threat. Some might call it genocide. Some might call it madness. Captain Chun leaned forward in her chair. But I want you to understand something. We didn't do this because we enjoyed killing. We didn't do it for revenge or glory. We did it because it was necessary. The Devourers had killed billions of innocent people across 17 worlds. They would have killed billions more if we had not stopped them. The recording showed her standing up and walking to a window that looked out into space. Humans have a saying, evil triumphs when good people do nothing. We could not do nothing. We could not let other families suffer what the people of Kepler 442 suffered. We could not let other children watch their parents die while monsters destroyed their worlds. She turned back to face the camera. So we became monsters ourselves. We turned our bodies into weapons, our ship into an instrument of war, our entire lives into one long battle. We gave up our colony, our dreams, our future, everything we had planned for ourselves and our children. Captain Chun sat down again, and for a moment she looked very old and sad. Was it worth it? I don't know. I hope so. I hope that somewhere, children are playing under stars that might have been dark if we had chosen differently. I hope that parents are tucking their little ones into bed on worlds that might have been empty rocks if we had not acted. The recording flickered, and her voice became weaker. To whoever finds this ship, please remember that humans are not naturally violent. We don't enjoy war. We don't want to hurt anyone. But we will do terrible things to protect innocent people. We will become monsters to fight monsters. We will sacrifice everything to make sure evil doesn't win. The hologram began to fade. Tell them, Captain Chen whispered. Tell them that humans are the galaxy's guard dogs. We don't want to bite anyone, but we will if we have to. And when we bite, we don't let go until the threat is dead. The recording ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Arya's hologram waited for the Zephyrians to speak. I understand now, said Voltar quietly. You warned us because you wanted us to know what humans are capable of. Yes, Arya replied. You see them as peaceful traders and friendly neighbors. That is true, but it is not the complete truth. Humans are peaceful because they choose to be, not because they have to be. When they stop choosing peace, they become something else entirely. Cathra shook her head. But this was just one ship, one group of people. Surely not all humans are like this. Arya's expression became very serious. Do you know what happened when news of the Aurora reached Earth? When other human colonies learned what Captain Chun and her people had done? What? They built monuments. They named schools after the crew members. They told the story to their children and their children's children. Captain Chun became a hero, and her choice became an example for all humans to follow. Arya gestured, and new images appeared around them. These showed human colonies, space stations, and ships throughout known space. Every human settlement now has trained defenders. Every colony ship carries weapons that can be assembled quickly. Every human child learns the story of the Aurora and what it means to be human. They are preparing for another war? Asked Jewel. They are preparing to protect others, Arya corrected. Humans have decided that what happened to the people of Kepler 442 will never happen again. Not to humans, not to Zephyrians, not to anyone. They have appointed themselves the guardians of innocent life throughout the galaxy. Veltar felt a chill run through his body. And if someone threatens innocent life, then they will face what the Devourers faced. Humans who refuse to surrender, refuse to compromise, and refuse to let evil win. Humans who will turn themselves into weapons in their homes in the battlefields to protect people they have never met. Arya looked at each of them in turn. This is why I called them a menace. Not because they are evil, but because they are incorruptible. They cannot be bribed, frightened, or reasoned with when they believe innocent people are in danger. They will do whatever it takes, pay any price, sacrifice anything to keep others safe. Even their own lives? Especially their own lives. Humans believe that dying for the right cause is better than living with the wrong choice. They would rather be dead heroes than living cowards. The Zephyrians stood in silence, trying to process what they had learned. Finally, Veltar spoke again. What do you want us to do with this knowledge? Arya smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuine smile instead of a sad one. I want you to go home and tell your people that they are safe. Tell them that somewhere in the galaxy, there are creatures who have appointed themselves protectors of the innocent. Tell them that bullies and monsters and predators will always face an enemy that refuses to give up. And if someone threatens us, Then you will learn what 17 other species learned too late. That humans are very, very bad at losing. Veltar nodded slowly. He understood now why Arya had called humans a menace. They were a menace to anyone who preyed on the weak, who bullied the peaceful, who thought that might made right. They were a menace to evil itself. "We should go," he said to his team. "We have learned what we came to learn." As they prepared to leave the bridge, Arya called out to them one last time. "Captain Veltar?" "Yes." "Remember that humans chose this role. No one forced them to become the galaxy's protectors. They could have stayed on Earth, built their colonies, lived quiet lives. But they chose to stand guard over others instead. That choice makes them both dangerous and precious." Veltar paused at the entrance to the bridge. "Will you be all right here alone?" Arya looked around the damaged bridge, then back at him. "I am not alone. I am surrounded by the memory of 50,000 humans who proved that good can triumph over evil if it refuses to give up. That is enough company for anyone." As the Zephyrian team left the Aurora and returned to their own ship, Veltar found himself thinking about the report he would have to write. How could he explain what they had found? How could he make his people understand what humans really were? In the end, he decided to keep it simple. He would tell them that humans were the galaxy's guardians, watching over everyone else like parent birds protecting their young. They were fierce when they had to be, gentle when they could be, and absolutely committed to making sure that evil never triumphed over good. And if anyone ever threatened the Zephyrian, people or any other innocent species, they would learn what the Devourers had learned. That humans were the real menace to anyone who chose to be a monster. The celestial harmony pulled away from the Aurora, leaving the dead ship floating alone in space. But Arya was right. The ship was not really alone. It was surrounded by the memory of heroes, and that memory would keep watch over the galaxy forever. Behind them, the Aurora drifted on through the void, a monument to the terrible and wonderful truth about humanity. They were not the strongest species or the smartest species or the most advanced species, but they were the species that refused to let evil win. And that made all the Yizor difference.